Hey everybody, how are you doing? It is 2:54 in the afternoon on the east, which pretty much makes it 11:54 in before noon in the west coast. And here's the news. The Raiders lease is not going to be signed this week. Or if it is going to be signed this week, it would have to be another meeting, because I was informed by the Oakland Alameda County Joint Powers Authority Executive Director Scott McKibben that the meeting would only be closed session, and that is to brief the board. I repeat, the meeting would only be for closed session, and that would be to brief the board. So I'll repeat what I said for those of you who just joined me and may have missed it, that few seconds. The meeting set for, again, either Wednesday or Thursday of this week by the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Joint Powers Authority will only be closed session, and that will be for Mr. McKibben, the authority's executive director, Scott McKibben, to brief the board. There will not be a signing of the lease, and that indicates a larger problem. And what is the problem? Well, last weekend I was informed that the city attorney's office had made some demands that were threatening to scuttle the deal. Now, what those demands were and are, I don't know. I was assured by another person that regardless of those demands, the lease deal was going to go through. And indeed, it's something that, had the Raiders signed it, would have been a great financial win for the Coliseum Joint Powers Authority, and a personal win for Scott McKibben, who worked and has worked really, really hard and continues to work really, really hard to steady the waters, which are, to say the least, choppy. But between the city attorney and the city attorney's demands, the Raiders, led by Mark Davis, the manager of general partnership, and their rather sensitive way of being, which got us here in the first place, okay? It's been a tough go for McKibben. And so where we are right now is just that. The board will be briefed. What the board will be told, the details, I don't know, okay? But what I do know is essentially what I'm telling you, so I'm briefing you. That's the situation right now. I also know that this matter needs to be resolved so that the NFL knows where the Raiders are going to play. And the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, has said that Mark Davis says he wants to remain in the Bay Area. Hey, welcome to Zenny 62, everybody. But I believe that when Roger says it, it's actually Roger saying that for the NFL, saying it as if it comes from the Raiders. In other words, hey, we'd like to see you remain in the Bay Area until Las Vegas Stadium is officially ready, whenever that is. So there are also other factors involved here, and that's me using my my instinct, okay? And here's why I say that. Someone in Las Vegas said something to me. In fact, I'll tell you who said it. It was at News 3 when they were apologizing for when Steve Wolford put out that news report trying to make me look bad. And so, hey, 32 Assassin. But the person who talked to me at News 3 said that there were a lot of hands involved in this deal on the Vegas side with the Raiders that, quote, shouldn't be there, unquote. Now, to what degree they have any influence that might reach over into this these lease negotiations, I don't know. There are also a number of outlying factors too, but those are the main deal right now. Is there's no lease signed for this week, okay? Let me get to your questions. 32 Assassin says, hey, first of all, Joseph Amenderis says good afternoon to you. And 32 Assassin asks, at what point does the league step in? This joke continues to run, ... The way the league is designed, you have to remember it's owned by the 32 owners. They own the National Football League. There has been, in recent years, starting about 5 years ago and sort of, well, actually, not even 5 years ago. It's been going on for the last 10, 15 years, but it's only gotten worse as the NFL's gotten richer. And it basically adds up to the staff trying to manage the owners. And so, in fact, the term that Bob McNair was accused of using, the late Bob McNair was accused of using, about the inmates guarding the asylum or something like that. Arguably, the staff of the NFL could be accused of thinking that, because they're basically trying to maintain a situation where the inmates, the owners, weren't guarding the asylum. All right, there really has been a lot of thought like that. That's why Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones called an owners-only meeting. He's done this twice, but he did it, to my knowledge, the first time 2 years ago. I'm sure they've had many different meetings of that type before, but in terms of them becoming public, which happened 2 years ago, that happened because of a Jerry Jones-led riff that also is tied to his interest in gambling, that has at points tried to push Roger Goodell out of the way. Roger is opposed to gambling, all right? Roger is opposed to gambling. So if you want to look at this from a system dynamics point of view, you could say that there are more, if you know system dynamics, there are more negative feedback loops impacting this lease deal than positive ones. The positive feedback loop is the fact that the Raiders have a place to stay, it exists. The fact that the Coliseum Joint Powers Authority under the lease pays their game day expenses, and the fact that they're already in Oakland, all right? So those are three factors that would create a positive feedback loop from a system dynamics point of view. But in terms of a negative feedback loop, you have Mark Davis and his dislike for being sued. You have his, and this would be a randoming variable, okay? His tendency to make impertinent decisions, impulsive decisions. That's another randoming variable that you have to throw in there, because you don't know at what point that something is going to set him off to where he says, do this, okay? And I'm not saying that the staff doesn't give him pushback at the Raiders. I'm sure there's pushback. But, all right, and then there's the other one with Las Vegas. And what we don't know is what kind of relationships they have with sponsors, with Clark County and politicians, where they're getting heat, the Raiders, for not being there at a certain time. I mean, there's a lot to this whole 2020 deal, I believe, that is not meeting the eye. And someone there wants them in place like right now. Now, of course, there are logical reasons to have them in place by 2020 with respect to the bond issue, because you want to be able to say you've got all of the elements, team, tenants, and so on in place, so that the tax revenue for hotels is being effectively increased because you have visitors there, because there are games to be played. If you don't have games played in 2020, it means you don't have visitors to hotels, which means you don't get that assumed bump in hotel tax revenue that was forecast. Now, there is a lot more complicated that goes into that. And I'm not saying this is what they are thinking, but if I were them, I would be thinking that. Okay? If I were them, I would be thinking that. All right? But the simple fact of the matter is this whole thing was rushed. And so now they're trying to catch up with reality. And reality has a way of reminding you that, well, it exists, right? Dell Jr., how you doing? Dell Jr. asks, hello, Raider Nation. I think too many people are sold on Nick Bosa. Different subject. Not going to deal with that right now. But, well, you know what? I'm going to be fair to you, Dell Jr. I apologize. Dell wants to weigh in on an NFL draft issue. Cool. I will appropriately adjust my brain. How's that? Dell Jr. says, hello, Raider Nation. I think too many people are sold on Nick Bosa. Personally, I don't think Bosa would do much for us. I agree. I agree with you. I think Nick you know, the whole issue of whether or not he's got, and I personally don't care if he has a race issue. If he has a race issue and he wants to, you know, make himself like an idiot and, you know, talk down his draft stock, ding. But my point is, look, the simple fact of the matter is, straight up, is that Montez Sweat is the darling of the draft. Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat is a physical specimen, even in a way that Nick Bosa is not. You cannot deny that. I mean, you just straight up can't deny that. And a lot of Ohio State's success came not just from Nick Bosa, but his other people involved, okay? Now, Joseph Mamadou says, Starya stepped out for a second, and do you think the lease is still going to go through, or do you think looking for another venue is ultimately the only option? They're running out of time. All right, this is March. They've got to have this wrapped up by the NFL annual meeting. That's this month, okay? Today is March, what, March 5th? So, yeah, so they have to have this wrapped up. I mean, and it's got to be wrapped up like right now. So this is an unusual situation to say the least. I can't predict for you exactly how this is going to turn out. I can say what should happen. I can say what it looks like, but this is uncharted territory. It really is. And so J-Dub, hey J-Dub, J-Dub says, so what do you think will ultimately happen at the end of it all about the stadium issue? Whew, you ask a big long question, I'll give you a big long answer. 32 Assassin follows up and he says, or asks rather, or says and asks, aside from the ultimate move and all the issues surrounding that, the other owner partners cannot be happy that the schedule for 2019 is delayed until the lease is resolved. Total bad luck. I completely agree. Now back to J-Dub's question. So what do you think will ultimately happen at the end? It's all about the stadium issue. It is all about the stadium issue. It's about the Las Vegas issue, which created the situation. It's about Mark Davis and how he responded to being sued with respect to a decision not to sign the lease extension, which got us into this other situation. Welcome to Zenny62 on YouTube, by the way. Everybody who's just joined us, please thumbs up, by the way. Much appreciated. Or if you come to thumbs down, hey, you know what? It doesn't affect anything. If you just want a thumbs down just to be a jerk, fine. Hey, Jamal Mills, how you doing? And thank you, Jamal Mills, for tuning in to our broadcast last night, my interview with Leslie Silver, and talking about her documentary, Sheltered Mercy, about the homeless problem in Sacramento and the mental illness problem as well in Sacramento and throughout the United States. Let me see if I can take a crack at this name. Tell me if I pronounce your name correctly, okay? Thanks, Jamal. Jamal says that was a great live. Thank you. If you haven't seen it, folks, please, Sheltered Mercy, check it out, check it out. Angel Bautista Perez. Did I pronounce your name correctly? A very beautiful name. I want to make sure I get that right. Angel Bautista Perez. I got that right? Angel says, what are your thoughts on Antonio Brown? I think Antonio Brown should be a target for the Raiders. My question is whether or not the Raiders can afford Antonio Brown or anybody else. And I say that because, again, the stadium situation in Las Vegas, and more specifically the fact that hotel stadium tax revenue did not meet anywhere near where it was forecasted to be by this point. I mean, it's off. It's negative, okay? The simple fact that that's the case means that the Raiders had to be concerned with filling in a monetary gap out of a pay-go until to make up the difference. Now, they've already gotten payment from the bond proceeds. That happened last year, all right? But that was, I believe, just over $500 million. But by my estimate, comparing what the consultants promised and was actually delivered, they are short by roughly $10 to $15 million. Now, it's not enough to say, oh, well, it's just 10 to 15 million, it's okay. No, because that 10 to 15 million could translate into a part here or there of the stadium not being built. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that's the reason for the delay, but you know, it's definitely a contributing factor. All right? There is a reason why they are behind, and it's a lot more to, it's not the weather or anything else. It's a combination of factors. It's the fact that they were 7 months late getting all the documents signed. If you're watching this and you paid attention to this with the kind of attention it deserves, this whole process, you remember that Stephen Hill, who's now the chief executive officer of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, had said in his role presiding over Las Vegas Stadium Authority that originally they had 5 months, by his estimation, to get all the documents signed. He said that in April of 2017, all right, thereabouts. Said April, May, June, July, August. Actually, yeah, he said that he said 5-6 months, okay, to get all the documents signed. That didn't happen. Instead, the documents weren't signed until the following April. April 2018, all right? So that's one problem. So you can't delay the signing of the documents, have a groundbreaking and say, okay, we got started, when in point of fact you really didn't. Delay the floating of the bonds by 4.5 months, which is what happened. And then at the same point say, oh, by the way, we're going to launch June of 2020. So good. What happened? It was moved back to July. And then what happened again? It was moved back to July 31st and then very quietly August. If you take a look at the stadium documents, it specifically says nothing can be scheduled for the first 2 weeks of August. They have to move that back too. So you are into the start of the NFL 2020 season. Why not just be up front about it? And again, it goes back to the pressure that Clark County and the Raiders have put on everybody to get this thing done in a hurry. It's not a good situation to be in. And that's why I wrote a piece earlier this morning accusing the Raiders of just, you know, in terms of looking around and having a preseason game in Canada when they should be taking care of their fan base in Oakland, the only intact fan base they really have, to be honest with you, outside of casino people who have a, you know, their own vested interest, right? Instead of taking care of those fans and treating them right, the Raiders produce one more example of disrespect for their fans. Oh, we're going to go to Canada, with the idea that people in Canada want to see them. People in Canada do not care about the Raiders. They're going to see it as a novelty, but it's not like they're going to become Raider fans like that and purchase enough items and cups and Raider gear and dolls and everything to sustain the Raiders for the next century. That's not happening, let alone the next month, okay? That is not happening. The organizations that are truly in sports, that are truly global brands, do one thing. First, they win. Second, they win for their fans in their cities. All of the organizations that are the most popular consistently all have one thing in common. They're intact in their areas for a long, long time. The Raiders cannot change that dynamic. Say, oh, no, we're the Raiders, we're going to be different. Well, so what? All right? All right, let me get back to your points. Pedro Gallardo, hey Pedro, he says, or asks, so if we can't get Antonio Brown due to cap money, does this mean free agency will not be exciting this year? Well, given the draft picks, the 3 in the first round, it makes it interesting. So I think it could be exciting even with that. 32 Assassin, AB can ball. Real question is his attitude and effect on locker room team chemistry. Can Gruden coexist with it? That's a question mark. And and this will be a test of the degree to which John has grown up in this way. And I did say it specifically like that. Keyshawn Johnson. When Keyshawn Johnson was a Buck, he and Gruden used to get into these arguments on the sideline. Look bad. It wasn't right for Keyshawn Johnson to treat John like that, but it wasn't right for John to basically argue back with him on the sidelines like he has to prove his manhood or something. That's what it looked like. It's like, I can't have this black guy yelling at me. I'm the head coach. All right? You don't argue back. The simple fact of the matter is, if you have a person who is arguing with you, first of all, listen to him so he's not yelling at you, because he is running your system. If he's running your system, then listen to what he has to say, try to incorporate his ideas, and go forward. You know, Randy Moss was a perfect example of what I'm talking about. No one would listen to him. Remember, he walked away from the Raiders during the Redskins game, just walked off the field, right? But when he got to the Patriots, he was different. Why? It wasn't because the Patriots had rings. It was because of the reasons the Patriots created that produced those rings. They listened to their players, which is only logical, like it or not, okay? So, point is, John, getting back to Antonio Bryant, if Antonio approaches him that way, and I don't think Antonio's going to approach John the way that Keyshawn Johnson did at all. And I apologize to Antonio Bryant for comparing him that way. I think Antonio Bryant will be an exciting addition to the Oakland Raiders. And I don't think he's going to be a locker room cancer. You have to remember something. Antonio's issues came from how he felt Ben Roethlisberger was treating him. And I think there's a lot of going on. There's a lot of changing in people going on because of the political environment. And you would say, oh, I don't want to deal with politics. But I have to be honest with you, folks. Because of the President of the United States, and because of our lack of desire of changing things, he's polarized this country. And so you would say, how does that impact the Steelers? I'll explain. You have a number of people who are African-American who are hypersensitive to racism at a level never before seen, because you have this ugly mix of social media communicating all these different actions, right? And a president of the United States who likes to divide people by race. And so it permeates all of society. That's how powerful a president can be. And that's why it's so important to vote, all right? So, hey, Lisette, how you doing? So my point is that Bryant sees Ben Roethlisberger, in my view, as talking down to him or treating him like he's, you know, the boy. And he's like, I'm not going to be treated like that. Now, in the past, prior to this kind of climate, Antonio Bryant wouldn't have liked that. Also, Antonio, for his own part, has gained in confidence. He's been on Dancing with the Stars. There's also some part of him that I think doesn't seem like it's quite fulfilled, all right? Whatever that is, I don't quite know, but it's there. And so, point is that Antonio feels it's necessary to speak out against what he perceives Ben Roethlisberger as doing. Now, is it right to do that? No, not publicly, because in this environment that already works against the black athlete, it's not helping him. The only way it helps him is if Ben Roethlisberger does or says something that is obviously racist as opposed to institutionally racist, okay? There's a difference. In other words, institutionally racist, Ben Roethlisberger can get away with, oh, he's not throwing him the ball, or he's not doing this or whatever. And then what happens is that AB ends up being the complainer, and everybody says, oh, like, you know, I think the fellow on Fox was saying the other day, you know, the league is against him. Oh, not the league isn't. The whole league isn't against him. But my point is, it's a dynamic that's set up that always makes the black athlete look bad because the black athlete doesn't have control. Roethlisberger's the quarterback. He is the person who guides things. He calls the shots. All right? So with that, okay, and you have a dynamic where Antonio can't win. It doesn't mean that Antonio is a bad locker room guy. That doesn't mean that at all. So Hey, Lisette, I hope I answer your question. I want to make sure I do not miss the other comments that are here. All right. So, but I do believe that John Gruden can coexist with Antonio Bryan very well. J-Dub says, it kills me we always have an out-of-country game. It takes away from the season ticket holders. It's disrespectful to the fan base. It's just not smart. 32 Assassins says, the Raiders have rarely treated their fans right. And the fans put up with it, you know, when they shouldn't. J-Dub says, us season ticket holders. Joseph Hernandez says, when the move to Vegas was decided, they were hoping to capture the LA Raider fans because the NFL knows the LA market should have been a Raider destination instead of Vegas if they can't stay in Oakland. But that's you know what? That's a whole coin flip. And I know you live in Los Angeles, but my point is, I haven't seen an example of LA Raider fans being so great that it doesn't matter that they're located in Oakland. All right? I have not seen that because what everybody's forgetting is that the core of fans have always been in Northern California and around Oakland. It ignores the existence of Fresno. It ignores the existence of Stockton. It's like there's Oakland and LA and nothing else. And that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. I also remind everybody that, look, when the Raiders were in Los Angeles, they did well in terms of attendance only when they won. But when they didn't win, hey, who came to the games? All right? LA is fickle. Straight out fickle, all right? Or has a history of being that. Now, you can't see, there's no comparison in LA to the Raiders situation because the Lakers are an LA institution. The Lakers haven't tried to leave LA. Let's be honest here. The Lakers are part of Los Angeles. They're part of Los Angeles' raison d'etre, reason for being, all right? The Raiders are interlopers. So I don't care what a few people say. The Raiders cannot lay claim to that area without numerically proving that area is truly all in for them to the point where every time there's a Raider game in Oakland, you have LA people flying up and selling out the Coliseum. That does not happen. So, hey, you know what? That doesn't happen. I didn't see LA people filling in the seats that went empty because you had Napa Raider season ticket holders and Napa located Raider fans who were harmed by the fire and are now harmed by the flood, all right, not being able to come to Raider games. Let's be real. Okay? So, no. Joseph Ramadera says, when the move to Vegas was decided, they were hoping... I got that one, okay. How come I do that sometimes? At any rate, Lizette, nice to have you here. Pedro asks, who else will use the Las Vegas Stadium, UNLV? I ask because if the Raiders can't play there till 2021, why not use the extra time to build the stadium right? Well, yeah, that's it. UNLV is slated to be the other tenant, and as the months go on, as we roll closer to NFL 2020, we're going to get they're going to be forced to tell us exactly what's going on, all right? I mean, right now, it's a matter of looking out and saying, hey, this thing doesn't look good. Why not just say it straight out? They're saying, wait a minute, we're selling season tickets. We're selling luxury boxes. Don't you want to buy ones, any? For 2020 and beyond. Don't say all that too much because we want to sell things. I get it. But do it right. Do it right. And I understand the situation that as it exists regarding revenue in 2020. But what do you choose, money or safety? Choose the safety. You know why? Because if you don't get the safety right, you're going to end up spending the money anyway. You know what I mean? Art Rodriguez. Art, how are you doing? Art says, I think Antonio Brown will work out. 4-car and Gruden, and that will help the team get better. I agree. Again, Antonio Bryant will be, if it happens, an exciting addition. The deal happens, not, you know, I'm not calling him it. An exciting addition to the Oakland Raiders. Pro Under Pressure says, true, not right, but Roethlisberger criticized Brown first in public, so maybe revenge. Yeah. And so then he gets called, you know, this crybaby because the media, which is institutionally racist, okay, has this habit of trying to make anyone black that complains about the system, which is institutionally racist, look bad for pointing out that, hey, it's not in their favor. Okay? I mean, the situation that I think about now is Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens, all right? And Donovan, the difference, however, is that Terrell was complaining about Donovan not getting the ball to him and doing so publicly. To his credit, Donovan went and tried to handle everything back channel, and it looked like they were going well. The reason why Donovan did that was because he was aware of how it would look. He was aware of the message that was being sent. But at the end of the day, Terrell didn't handle it right. Okay. And managed to basically write his own ticket out of there. All right. So that was a case of quarterback and receiver. But the whole point is that during that time, you didn't hear the public come to Donovan's side as much as they were sort of just watching it, including the media. Look back at the comments of the time. All right, we didn't have social media to the extent we do today, but we had media, okay? It was a lot more balanced, and that's because of a situation where, frankly speaking, you had a black quarterback and you had a fan base that necessarily didn't want him to be there, remember? But then he started to perform well, okay? He was accepted. And then you had Terrell Owens, who was really doing well when he caught the passes, and then criticized McNabb. So definitely both had their fan bases, but it wasn't what the Steelers situation is, which is, hey, Roethlisberger's 1,000% correct, and Antonio Bryant is just wrong. And also it happened, I might add, at a different point in our society. So, it really is important to do a check on where society is in this situation. Because look, I know people don't like it, but the fact of the matter is all this is intertwined. Pedro Gallardo says, Fresno, baby. J-Dub says, wasn't the Olympic Stadium like 100,000 seats too? Yep. Pedro Gallardo says, but wouldn't you say the Raiders would do better in LA than the Rams or Chargers? Yes, if they were winning. Now, because I believe that both the Rams and the Chargers are being forced down the throat of the LA fan. But the simple fact of the matter is that the fans are going to the games. I mean, it doesn't matter if they were actors that were paid or whatever. You have people going to the games. I don't think anybody has that much money to pay. You know, well, maybe. But word would have gotten out if that were the case. LA is a big area. You're talking about 30 million people. You can't get a fan base to watch your games out of 30 million people. There's something wrong. So, and the Rams do have a legacy there. There's a lot of history there. You have old timers that play with the Rams. So, yes. Now the Chargers, different story. Different story. And at 32 Assassin just reminded us, the Rams have a long history in LA. Very long. Very long. And a very proud one at that. And noted. So I would parse that, Pedro. I would say that the Raiders would do almost as well as the Rams. And definitely better than the Chargers. Okay. But let me tell you where that cutoff point is at. Once the new Rams Stadium is opened, as fabulous as it is, that changes the dynamic, or that should change. It will be a test that should change the dynamic for Chargers fans. The cutoff will be the cost to see games there. If it's exorbitant, and you already have a Chargers fan base that's more not there than there, it's going to be worse. Now here is the bigger overarching problem to tack on to that. According to Jerry Jones, the NFL only relies on fans for 7% of its revenue. So if you think about that, 7%, okay? And you think about the existence of the Chargers within that 7%, you take that 7%, and let's just for grins divide it by 32 teams. That means the NFL as a whole feels like it can lose, quite literally lose, that Chargers amount and still keep the San Diego Chargers in LA and not worry about saying, hey, maybe we'd be better off in San Diego because the franchise value is better in LA. Remember, all of this started because Steve Ballmer bought the Clippers for $2 billion, and as he said on Jimmy Kimmel, I think it was last week, everybody thought I was crazy. But he, in that action, Steve Ballmer, changed the face of the business of sports forever. Steve Ballmer is arguably the person at fault for this relocation frenzy. So, Will Pinder says, a lot of Raider fans from LA show up to Raider games. But Will, again, prove to me, because no one has, that that number is enough to make up for, to consistently show a sellout, regardless of the situation, where every seat is filled. I didn't see that. And there's a direct correlation between the disasters in the Bay Area and the number of empty seats on game day that we saw on television. So I'm not buying it. You want to tell me that maybe 100 people came up? That's 100 people out of 50,000 people. Okay, fine. Someone could probably make a case for, someone else flying in from the East Coast to see a Raider game. Or any other visiting team, all right? Who probably bring in more. I'm not buying it until I see the specific numbers. Okay? Because I'm certain those numbers are going to back my point. J-Dub says, historical isn't a pro football city. They're more of a college, basketball, and sports city. What do you mean, J-Dub, there? Joseph Armendariz says, I agree, but when the Raiders play the Rams here in LA Coliseum, we took over the whole stadium. No questioning the importance of the origin of fans in Oakland. But my point is, that is respect. Okay, that point is, that's fine, okay? But note, you said when the Raiders play the Rams here in LA, you guys took over the Coliseum, all right? Part of that has to also be people who come from Oakland and Northern California down to LA to see the game, right? They weren't all LA people in that stadium wearing black and silver. Don't just think because they were in LA, oh, all these folks live in LA and they're all Raider fans. All right, just saying. Just saying, okay? All right? So I still hold with that. Nice try, though. Will Pinder says, LA fickle? Laugh out loud. What about Laker and Dodgers fans? Well, but hey, Laker and Dodgers fans. Laker fans, and I haven't looked at numbers for Lakers, and I will, but when I watch Laker broadcast, the seats are filled, even more so than they are for some Warrior games, all right? Just saying. Now, there have been times when it looked like in the past, LA fans were kind of not really showing up, and we had a number of instances where the Stars forgot that the Lakers existed because they weren't winning. All right? Not perfect. But then also, my point is that the Lakers are still, they have more of a fan base than not because they're part of the urban fabric of LA. So I can't compare them to the Raiders situation because they're not trying to move all the time. Again, show me a sports organization that can claim fiscal success and yet move around all the time. Not seeing it. Okay? Not seeing it. Not seeing it. 32 Assassin talks about the history of the Rams in LA and says they're hugely successful in the 50s. Arcade, how you doing? Arcade says, I went to Raider games in LA and the place was a ghost town. See? The real Noriega, I haven't seen you in a while. He says, what's the hold up on the lease for lease? The hold up is basically between the city attorney's office and the Oakland Raiders and additional elements, which I don't know what they are yet, and I will find out, that the city attorney wants that have caused this whole thing to slow down. The deal should have been signed by today. J-Dub says, that is true. I forget about the Deacon Jones, Jack Youngblood era of the Rams. See? Thank you, 32 Assassin, for reminding all of us. 32 Assassin adds, anytime a new stadium opens up, there's a turnover in season ticket holders and attendees. Al's cousin says, if it's only 7%, then why build stadiums at all? Al, it's a great point, okay? And it gets to a stadium future that many have talked about where, and I remember Amy Trask mentioned this, I think about a few years ago, where a future stadium for the Raiders may only have 20,000 seats. Okay. If you want to get a look at, but then you would ask, and I would ask, anybody else would ask the question, why have a stadium for the Rams as 80,000 if you have that problem? Great question. Okay. Why have a Cowboy stadium as large as it is? And the answer there is they sell out. Now think about this, folks. Have the Dallas Cowboys ever talked about leaving Dallas? The answer is no. Are the Dallas Cowboys the most successful franchise in the NFL, if not all of sports? Yes. Okay? Stability matters. Stability matters, okay? All right, so folks, I'm going to talk about this later tonight. We talk about the NFL Combine. I'll be back. And hey, Juan Ramirez, I'll get any other questions you guys want to get in before I sign off. I'll take them real quick because I had to get ready to get my mom up the street here. And Juan Ramirez says Mark Davis must sell the team. Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Thoughts? Emotions? All right. See everybody later then. About 11:30 tonight, I'll try. Yes, I will. 11:30 Eastern.